Did you know that the original Resident Evil series defined the entire Survivor horror franchise? Hi, it's Jamie from Pixel Discoveries, and thanks so much for joining me as we dig up some new discoveries from the very first Resident Evil title. Today we're going to check out hidden areas, unseen players, and a strange connection to Seinfeld that would leave even the most seasoned S.T.A.R.S members scratching their heads. Get ready to discover secrets that you never knew existed in the original Resident Evil. You probably already know that many games originate in Japan with Japanese voiceovers and texts that are later localized for international releases. Resident Evil was somewhat unique in that it was developed in Japan but utilized a combination of American and European actors. For some reason, even the Japanese version had English-only voiceovers and added Japanese subtitles.
Barry! Where's Barry?
But there was a rather simple explanation for this. The creator of the series, Shinji Mikami, was quoted as saying, "We felt that since the Resident Evil world takes place in America, that it only made sense to have English voiceovers." That's fair enough, but wouldn't it have been interesting to hear a Japanese version of the dialogue? Would it have been better than the English version? I guess we may never know, until now that is. After doing a bit of research, an extremely obscure disc bundled with the DualShock release, simply called Biohazard Complete Disc, contains some of the original Japanese voice samples. As you can hear, the voice acting is pretty good and well suited for a public release. However, the production team felt the performance of the Japanese voice actors wasn't adequate, so they decided to stick with the award-winning quality of the English voice actors.
Not for me. Even today, eldest daughter. I'm sorry.
Don't worry about that. I know he must still be alive.
The health bar is an effective tool for monitoring the player's ability to stay alive. Resident Evil has 3 standard status messages which are actually based on a percentage. Fine, which is 75%, caution, 25%, and danger, 0%. There's another status of poison which incrementally reduces your health by a few percentage points over time. But did you know that another status exists? By doing a bit of digging around the game's 2-dimensional graphical data, we see a status called good. It's not exactly clear what the difference between good and fine would have been, but it's also strange that good appears after fine in the graphical hierarchy, hinting that fine was better than good. Speaking of the status screen, when we load up an early prototype version, we can see the health display is quite different. But wait a second, we can see 2 unused characters here. But who are they? When we first load up the game, we're presented with a player select screen, with the ability to select one of 2 digitized versions of real actors. Originally, these players looked much more cartoony, likely because the actors hadn't been selected at this point in development. When we analyze the graphical data in an earlier build, we can see the original versions of Chris and Jill, and although cartoony, represent the characters rather effectively. No surprises there, but wait a second, who's this character? He appears to have a red glowing eye. And next to him is yet another unknown character with a rather unusual-looking hat. Apparently, these characters are named Gelzer and Dewey, and were planned to be playable characters but likely scrapped due to time constraints. You can see them here in this early sketch of the entire S.T.A.R.S team. Could you imagine having 2 additional playable characters? What kind of side stories would they have? Let me know in the comments what you think might have happened with these characters. All the rooms in the first 3 Resident Evil releases are pre-rendered versions of 3D worlds. To put it simply, they're nothing more than digital pictures with 3D models for the player and movable objects superimposed on top. This explains why some key objects appear brighter or out of place. Since the rooms are stored just like pictures on a digital camera, we can review all of the rooms by sifting through the game's image data. But what do we have here? These rooms don't look familiar at all. What we're seeing is some leftover rooms that, although didn't make it to the final game, are still stored on the game disc. If there's one thing about the franchise that we either love or hate, it's the typewriter. It's an essential item to save your progress so that you can take a break and pick up where you left off. But apparently it was an afterthought. Let me explain that a little further. In this first hidden room, we have a modified angle of the staircase. It may seem like nothing special is happening here, but if we look carefully, we can see that the typewriter is completely missing. This appears to be an angle that was left over from the early prototype, likely before the ability to save through the typewriter was implemented. This early staircase can also be seen in the March 1996 version of Game Player's magazine. Next, we have this angle of the pinball machine, which has some added colors. Also notice that the wall is a different texture compared to the original. This area has some strange lanterns and some other props that didn't make the final cut. This room has a red curtain which leads to nowhere. It's not clear where this room would have been, but we can speculate that it was likely found here on the map. The next discovery takes us outside the Resident Evil universe. Let's open the door and see what we'll discover. Now it's time for a little quiz. What do Resident Evil and the 90s sitcom Seinfeld have in common? Chris's hairdo was inspired by Cosmo Kramer, Elaine's dance moves mimic the zombie walk, or is it that they share the sound of a bottle opening? If you guessed it was C, you're correct. Now let's explain this. When using the crank in the guardhouse area, we hear a distinct squeaking noise being made when it's turned. In Season 8 of Seinfeld's Bizarro Jerry episode, Jerry's girlfriend offers to open a bottle for him.
Drink your beer.
Did you hear that? We hear the exact same squeaky sound effect being used. Let's play it again. Is there a hidden element that only you know about? Let me know in the comments, and I hope you enjoyed this video enough to entice you to stick around and become a subscriber. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.